Hi, I'm Richard Vague with Tycos. In last week's historic presidential debate, both candidates lambasted the other for ruining the economy. I think I may have heard the words destroyed and disaster. So were those claims true? There are a number of ways you could use to assess this, and none of them are fully satisfactory. But it's instructive to at least give it a try. And we've opted today for a pretty straightforward approach, which is to simply look at 2023 for Biden, which is our most recent full calendar year, and 2019 for Trump, the last full pre-pandemic year. First thing to say is that both candidates are wrong in their accusations of the other, of course, since the economy was in reasonable shape in both periods. The second thing to note is that except for catastrophic moments like the pandemic in 2020, what government does is less relevant and important to economic outcomes than the innovations, initiatives, and missteps of the private sector itself. The president is much more likely to be subject to forces not of his making rather than the other way around. Just asked Martin Van Buren, Ulysses Grant, Grover Cleveland, and perhaps even the seemingly feckless Herbert Hoover. That notwithstanding, let's look at 2023 versus 2019. From a real GDP growth standpoint, it's a virtual dead heat at 2.5% in both years. Perhaps you could give a slight nod to 2023 since the world's other largest countries posted a 2.2% gain, meaning the U.S. was 13% better than those countries, while in 2019 the average of the other six largest countries was 2.4%, so the U.S. was only 4% better, but that's splitting hairs. To remind you, we focus on the 7 largest countries in the world, which together constitute 60% of global GDP. That's the U.S., China, Germany, Japan, India, France, and the U.K., and after those 7, there's a big drop-off in size, which accounts for our focus on these 7 primarily. How about unemployment for Trump and Biden? Here again, it's a virtual dead heat, the level of 3.6% in 2023 versus 3.7% in 2019. Again, both numbers are much better than the others, at 4.7% in 2019 and 4.3% in 2023 for the 6 other countries' average. So perhaps here we give the nod to 2019 since we were further below the average of the other 6 largest countries in that year. How about the trade deficit? Here's an issue that both Trump and Biden have highlighted. But again, there's almost no difference. It was an ugly negative 3.9% in 2023 and an ugly negative 4.0% in 2019. This compares to a negative 0.1% in 2019 and a negative 0.8% in 2023 for the other major countries. So maybe we were less worse in 2023 if there is such a phrase. But now let's get into real wage growth. And while real wages are up for both years, we do see a difference. It was 2.9% in 2019 and only 1.9% in 2023. But in both cases, it was very close to the average of the other 6 largest countries. It was 2.9% for us in 2019 as compared to a 2.7% average for the other countries, and 1.9% for us in 2023 as compared to 2.1% average for the other countries. The big reason for the decline from 2019 to 2023 for us and for the world is inflation, which eats into wage gains. In 2019, inflation was 1.8%. In 2023, it was double that at 4.1%. And bear in mind that prices jumped 9% in 2022, meaning the cost of everyday items has increased markedly from 2019 to 2023. Note, however, again, that both numbers were right in line with the other major countries, which averaged 1.9% in 2019 and 4.4% in 2023. Since inflation impacted countries across the globe in a similar way, it should be pretty clear that our inflation had very little to do with the specific circumstances in the U.S. as opposed to more universal or global factors. At first, as is now pretty widely understood, our inflation came from COVID-linked supply chain disruption, but that's largely been resolved. And sure enough, inflation dropped from 9% in 2022 to 3% now as a result of resolving those issues. But two things are still true. Though prices are no longer increasing at a high rate, they are still high and unlikely to drop much, if at all. Second, the 3% inflation we now have is itself higher than folks want, and it has been sticky at that level due primarily to high energy prices, which is in at least part a function of the world's current bellicosity, and high interest rates a function of the Fed's unfortunate belief that it needs those high rates. But even with these two adverse factors, it is reasonable to expect inflation to moderate over the next year or so. Which leads us to one last comparison, interest rates. In 2019, mortgage rates were 3.7%, and in 2023, they were 6.6%. That compares to 3.0% in 2019 and 4.5% in 2023 for the other major countries' average. And that difference is generally true for other rates as well, beyond mortgage rates, such as bank prime lending rates. Given the facts on low wage growth, high prices, and high interest rates, it's not hard to see why voters today are less satisfied than in 2019. Maybe Biden should put in a call to the Fed. That's it for this week, and as always, continue the conversation in the comments below. Thanks so much.